I am here with Ken Bozeman. Ken, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
It's fantastic to have you here. And the reason I wanted to have you on is I want to talk to you about this concept of the Chiaroscuro whisper. Can you explain to us what it is and how you came up with this concept?
Sure. So identifying the resonances of the vocal tract that create the formants that we hear on the outside is challenging. But if you introduce a noise into the vocal tract, at either end actually, some people introduce a white noise from their phone app into their mouth. Chadley Ballantyne uses that somewhat. I do it with an adapted whisper, which basically means the vocal folds are put almost together to generate a turbulent noise at the glottis, very soothingly, not stressfully. And that a white noise, which is what that is, has theoretically every frequency. Like white light has every frequency of light, it has every frequency of sound running through your vocal tract, so it completely populates the hills and valleys of your resonance structure, so that what you hear on the outside, which are the radiated formants, and the formants are basically just radiated frequency peaks, completely match the resonances as they're being shaped by your vocal tract. So it's a really handy way to know exactly how you're tuning your vocal tract. And you can hear, if you tune precisely enough, you can actually hear the pitches of each of those resonance peaks. If they're sharply tuned, they have a narrow bandwidth, they will have a pitch-like percept with them. So I can know the two pitches of each vowel and tune them favorably for whatever I'm going for. And favorably means not only well tuned, but really soothingly, pleasurably, comfortably tuned.
Okay, so there's a lot in there, what you just said. But my first question that pops to mind is, Dr. Donald Miller, he liked to have people use a vocal fry. I remember he'd refer, I was on his mailing list, and he'd call us the friars.
Friars, right.
Yeah. And how is a fry different from the white noise of the whisper?
So, first of all, I'll just give you a little personal history there, because I was good friends with Donald Miller, and his work was terrific, and I owe a lot to him, though I observed a lot of things independently of him, but then they were confirmed because he was doing good science with Harmschutte, so they sort of gave me more courage about what I thought I was observing. But at any rate, because of my own presbylarynx evolution, I had rather early a wasting happening in my vocal folds. And with wasting, you often get bowing. So a lot of older, mostly gentlemen, can have vocal fold bowing. Well, when you have bowing, you lose closure ability, and it creates a variety of problems. But among them is, it becomes very difficult to do a vocal fry. Vocal fry requires thick, loose vocal folds. If they're wasting, they're thinner. They still could be sort of loose, but they don't close sufficiently to do a vocal fry. So I couldn't do the vocal fry. So I thought, well, I want to figure out what I can do to tune, because he uses that to tune resonances as well. And so I came up with this Chiaroscuro whisper. Why Chiaroscuro? I'll get to your question in a moment. Why Chiaroscuro? A typical whisper tends to be a somewhat constricted and divergent and mouthy whisper instinctively. I don't know how universal that is, but that's my experience with it. So we tend to whisper,
we keep it bright, so people can hear us.
Well, we do that for two reasons. That's one of them, because we feature the high frequencies, because our hearing is more sensitive high, right? So we need the high frequencies to hear it. And also vowel tone color for most of our vowels is high frequency content. Everything below C5 sounds like ooh. C5 to C7 has most of all the other vowel colors, and above C7 is E. So we cheat high with the typical whisper to make sure that the vowels are heard and we're heard. Chiaroscuro, but it's also can be a little bit taxing on the voice because there can be some constriction, supraglottic constriction involved, whereas a chiaroscuro whisper is with a very relaxed, soothing and it's done with more what I consider to be more honest affects, because I think when we're expressing things more honestly, we feel our expressive center more in our center, less facey. I suppose it's a legitimate expression. I don't know, but I feel our emotional center is more in the center of us, really in the pharyngeal area. It's not back, but it's kind of in the middle. Anyway, so I started playing with that, and also I wanted it to be really soothing. I did not want it to be an irritating thing, since I was going to be practicing it a lot and suggesting it. Now, you asked me, that's part of the question. Oh, so vocal fry is maybe a little bit more low frequency dominant. Chiaroscuro whisper is pretty broad, but a little bit more high frequency dominant. So when I do it, most people key in on the second formant pitch. They key in on the... I can make you hear the lower one better. So if I thump, it's more low frequency dominant, and I whisper at the same time, you actually get both of them, and you get the duet between these two. So both are possible. I can't know, since I can't do a good glottal fry, I can't know this for sure, but I feel like my chiaroscuro whisper can be closer to a regular song sound than the vocal fry. But I don't know that for sure. It may be possible to do a vocal fry in such a way that you don't compromise the area right around the vocal folds in a way that's different from if you were singing normally. So that I don't really know, because I can't really test that. But I had to go with the chiaroscuro whisper myself, and I feel like from the feedback I get, which is really kind of amazing, when teachers really get onto it and they play with it and they write back about it, the feedback I get is that they find it really useful and transferable to singing. That is, you sense the shape you're making and the sounds that are coming through it well enough to retain that when you then try to sing through the same sensation and sense, you get the better result that you want, which is more effective resonance tuning per situation.
So there's something really fascinating going on here, and you talked about the high frequency, but you can literally hear the pitches. And then I think the next one can either be E or D. Am I correct?
Depend on your pronunciation.
Yeah.
In other words, if you want a really brighter ah, you can use a higher pitch for the ah. I recently have tried doing this and I haven't explored this well. This would definitely fall in your bailiwick for CCM styles instead of this, which is B-A-G-D, B-A-G, which is a G major pattern. I'm trying an E major pattern.
Oh.
To a G sharp and an E and a B, A, G sharp. So I'm only brightening some of the vowels. Because I know that pop genres want to even be more speech-like, and brightening up some of those vowels helps in that direction. And as long as you do the other targets, and included in the targets is, it must feel really easy in your neck. So you don't feel work in the neck to get that tuning done, which basically just means that whatever I'm doing with my tongue, which is mostly tuning those things, it's a comfortable activity It's a real activity. It's not blasé, but it's very specific, but it's very comfortable and soothing, which is why I always use affects. Use some self-soothing affect. So that's the E major version. That's actually fairly new, and I haven't gotten any feedback on that one yet. But I would welcome you to play with that if you find it useful,
Yeah.
and let me know.
Because I've got the other one in my ear so strong. But
the other one is really soothing, and it's the classical
Yeah.
one because it's like the most easy to relax my throat with.
Yeah. And what people are doing, just for people who are listening and wondering, is essentially you're tuning the resonances of the vocal tract, but you can kind of focus on them independently. So for me, the upper one is very easy to hear, and that's the one I focus on.
Right.
And you're moving, the tongue, and then the last three is a little more the lips.
Yep.
As you drop it.
Yep.
Tuning the first resonance, that's a little less in my awareness. What are the pitches and what should we be listening for on the first frequency?
So this
is
a work.
resonance.
This is a work in progress, and I'll explain why. When I do it well, what feels like I'm really doing well, and I know the positions are good from singing, the first formant peaks are lower than I thought they were. And there's several curiosities about that, because where the voice turns is where I've predicted it on all the charts that I've, published. Those are still accurate for practical application, but the actual pitches that I thought, so it turns out that I'm thinking now, this is why I say it's a work in progress. I used to say when the second harmonic rises above the first formant, the voice turns over. I think when it gets about a minor third above is where that turn is decisively completed. Why do I say that? Because that's where it turns relative to these first formant peaks when I do the Chiaroscuro whisper. And I know that the Chiaroscuro whisper is rather specific about where those resonance peaks are. So, now to answer your question, rather than being, I would have thought of that for E, A, A, O, U. It's actually if I bring them both out independently and then just balance them, you can usually begin to hear the duet. Are you able to hear the duet?
Yeah, I can hear. I can actually hear both. Yep.
On our transmission, and that's useful because that's actually ear training for resonance tuning. It's ear training and kinesthesia, or proprioceptive training, for what it feels like. So they're lower than I thought they were. And if the bandwidth is narrow enough, they sound like a fairly clear pitch.
Yeah.
And apparently that has something to do with how you're tuning them. A broad bandwidth gives you a little bit more. It is a pitch, but it's a little bit less clearly pitched. It's more like a high frequency versus a B6. Okay. It's a, and the more sharply tuned are stronger. The more sharp, the narrower the bandwidth, the more intense the resonance will be. The broader the bandwidth, the more it will pass more frequencies through, but it'll be at a weaker intensity level.
And so how do you control this bandwidth?
Utterly by auditory target. If I know which pitch to go for, and I use the pitch and the comfort of it almost more than the vowel. I know what the vowel is, but our tendency is to over-articulate the target vowel sound. So each vowel has two sounds, a target sound that's the real identifying color of that vowel, and then a complementary sound that sort of makes it sound nicer, okay? Usually it's a rounding, warming, neutralizing complementary sound. Whereas the target sound is very specifically, E frequency is just high, bright frequency. E. Well, that's thin and, there's still E color in that, but there's some E color in there as well. So anyway, I lost track of the question. Oh, how do I, so if I over-articulate the target, it'll mess it up. So I suggest the vowel and go for the pitch. And a colleague that you know well, Sam Johnson.
Yeah.
Right. He said, what I've done with some people to help them find it is I'll have them sweep up to the pitch and stop when they get to the right pitch, because we tend to overshoot the pitch from over-articulating the target vowel. We tend to do E-A-A, E-A-A. But if I go, he was using an
Yep.
I use a W. And I just take whatever vowel I get when I get to the right pitch. Because as you do the more and more open vowels, you will hear more and more of the complementary vowel color, and your language training will make you unsatisfied stopping there. You'll want to go all the way to an exaggerated target vowel. This is why I now say, because I've said for a long time that this thing was designed, and you can choose whatever you want, by God or by nature or a combination of the two, wherever your worldview is, designed to express feelings. That's what its purpose is as far as voicing, aside from swallowing and all that. It actually, and I frankly reject the notion that is a secondary overlaid thing. I think it's survival based. I think it's utterly survival based. So I think it was from the beginning. We made sounds to survive. So I consider that, is not a later thing that, we figured out. Language is a later thing that we figured out. So I say language is actually the problem. I love language. Language is the problem. We didn't start with language. It's a later learned overlay on a system that's built to express emotions.
I love that.
Feelings.
I love that.
Not only in our evolution or our development as a species, but individually. First thing we did, we used this to express feelings completely until we learned language, how to manipulate sounds and use it for language. So language is the problem. So why is language the problem? It's because you sing to express feelings and which have colors, and with language targets to communicate ideas, which is where the language comes in. But the targets from language, the auditory targets, the output targets, which is how we organize motor behavior, output targets, come from a fairly narrow speech level range. We got the colors of those as we were forming language, not from high screeching, but from e, down here. And then we expect those sounds and sensations to stay exactly the same up and down the range. And that's impossible. So language becomes the problem. If we're trying to sing through the entire range of the voice, expression is the solution. So my mantra is language is the problem, expression is the solution. We've got to get back to the garden, where we primarily use this to express feelings. And when we do that, we let the timbres migrate. We let the timbres and the sensations migrate as they necessarily must, rather than chasing a particular language target, sound and sensation up and down the range and trying to make it sound the same. Now, the challenge for us is, okay, how do we do that with language, right? Because we do want to use language. So we learn how each language sound, each vowel, necessarily migrates across range, and how across range the sensations of sound migrate across range, so that we let that happen, even as we're trying to do language, so that we don't try to hold things the same that can't stay the same. We allow the migrations to happen.
How can one utilize this technique when working a song or in practice?
So as I've written in some of my writings, I say, suggest the vowel, insist on the affect. So if I try to find my inner child, pre-language child, just, I like to use animal sounds and toddler sounds because they haven't dealt with this language problem so much. They aren't so messed up like we adults are. They don't care what they look like or sound like. They're just expressing feelings, right? And animals completely could care less, what we think about their sounds, right? So I use that. So say I'm going to do an ah. Well, I'll take an ah from speech level. And of course, if I want to, I can also chiaroscuro that ah. Ah, 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 ah. It's useful for my brain to know that the undervowel of an ah is literally an O harmonic, but we tend to hear the undervowel blended with the target vowel, so we tend to hear it already blended together. We hear kind of like an like if I do sounds kind of like an right? So I know that an has Then I just do feelings. I start with a speech level in speech range. Then I just leave it alone and do a feeling to go high. Here's one of my favorites. Toddler, I want my mommy affect. I want my mommy. I can negotiate my range. The vowel's migrating, the sensation's migrating. I could do that more robustly if I were younger. Turned 73 about a week ago.
Happy birthday.
You can do it full voice and it'll be a little bit more robust and ringy, but it will still migrate. And the sensations migrate from open timbres, which is essentially oral, to higher, which gets a good bit of the sound sensation gets into the hard palate and above it. And that's actually really useful in CCM styles and in belting. The more it stays just in your mouth, the more trouble it's going to be for your vocal folds. The more the sensation gets above your mouth and settles into the body and only is just partially in the mouth, the better it'll feel in the neck, which is where we feel excess effort pretty much. Instead of chasing the target sound, there's a whole lot of in that up high, but I didn't reshape for that. The pitch does it. Pitch change automatically does it.
Yeah, and then that migration eliminates us chasing that shout instinct. I mean, if we want to talk about emotion and primal, I mean, the shout instinct is really hardwired, and that accompanies with really pressing at the vocal folds and really pushing air. And so the body will gravitate to that if we don't allow those vowels to migrate, usually.
Right. And we do that to save our lives, in which case we don't care if we get a little hoarse, if we survive whatever the trauma is we're facing, right? So it's hardwired from very early on, but it's not sustainable to sing 8 shows a week with, okay? It will just totally shred your chords because, so if you want that kind of survival, you have to learn how to let things migrate.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Ken, where can people find out more about you?
Well, I have a Yola website, this kenbozeman.com, which is the easiest one to remember. Ken Bozeman, B-O-Z, like Bozeman, Montana, B-O-Z-E-M-A-N. And on the homepage, and there's a lot there, and I don't sell, you can find where to order my books there if you want to, but this a free site with a lot of free stuff. On the homepage is my Lawrence University faculty website. Even though I'm retired from there, they let me keep my website. And there are more recordings on that website, recordings of my own singing when I performed, but also below that, under recordings, a lot of lectures I've given for various groups that have allowed me eventually, after they've used them for their purposes, to post them for free. So, there's lectures from 30 minutes to 2 hours long, and there's probably a dozen lectures there, and I keep adding to them as people allow me to post that information. And on YouTube, if you YouTube Chiaroscuro Whisper and Ken Bozeman, and I'll be adding more. Oh, I want to tell you this, the latest with Chiaroscuro Whisper. This is really cool. So watch this. If I find my target, my auditory high second formant pitch target, you can keep targeting that and move your head around to make sure that there's no inappropriate bracing or work, and still target that pitch over and over again. Sorry, I've got some street noise going on out here. Car, right on the corner here.
And so you're moving your head for people who are just listening. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm moving my head all around and keep targeting that same pitch and pleasurable comfort in the neck. By the way, the best diagnostic for vocal deficiency is pleasure. Duh, right? It feels easy. If you're doing it well, it feels easy, right? If it doesn't feel good, it is not efficient. Okay, so that's a very built-in one. Ingo Tietze claims that synergistic biological systems, which is a fancy way of saying living creatures, tend to self-organize for efficiency if given appropriate output targets and if they have enough flexibility to explore solutions for those targets, they will find the most efficient one. And I add to that, and how do they know when they found efficiency? Pleasure. The one that feels the best, okay, that's the efficient one. I got my output target, and I got it pleasurably. I can do that 8 shows a week. I lost my train of thought. Oh, then the other one is this, for active vowel modification. When we need to open the mouth more for particular pitches and particular vowels, same deal. I can open my mouth more and keep targeting. And my goals are to keep targeting that pitch and keep targeting the most pleasurable, easy sensation possible in my neck and use expression. Whatever I'm doing as I open my mouth more, I'm having to do a little bit of retuning of the tongue shape. It's got to feel easy in the neck. And it will feel more pharyngeal in the sense of noise and comfort in the pharynx and less to the mouth. If you put the bright part in the front, it'll be the spread, reachy thing. And I got this from Wolfgang Zaus, that actually, even though it's completely universal, this I knew myself, completely universal to perceive bright as forward and dark as back. All humans feel it that way as far as I know. It misleads tuning a little bit. If we do too much bright to the front, it'll tend to raise the larynx and spread the tone. If we put dark in the back, it'll tend to depress the larynx and swallow the tone. But if we reverse our thinking about it and put my finger at my lips and go bright to the front, that's a typical whisper. But if I put my finger right in front of my ears at the and think the bright E there. Similarly, if I put dark in the back, I depress my larynx and do that fakey yawny thing, which is no good for any style as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
That's like a bad imitation of wrong-headed opera singing.
Exactly.
And opera sung well does not done that way, in my view. But if I put that, think about the sound, that E, if I put that in the front, notice, bright in the back, dark in the front, I get the same sound. It's just like two different sides of the same coin.
Yeah, and it will give the singer more of that vertical sense. Yep. Rather than everything being on the horizontal and the shout, they'll experience the vertical.
Yep.
Well, Ken, thank you so much. And thank you for all that you do for the singing community and the teaching community.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, John. And you too. Love your work.
Oh, well, thank you so much.